Military Training Center. But for these new members of the Afghan National Army, the day started hours ago. It's cold, wet, and muddy. But these young men know not to complain. It's the quickest way they'll get sent home. For men like Javad Ghazni, the Army offers many things: a paycheck and a chance to break out of the poverty that plagues Afghanistan.
پیش ما یک فرد ملکی بودیم، حالا شدیم نظامی. خیلی چیزا را یاد گرفتیم، از اول سلاح M16 و انداختش.
Amid the rain and the fog of confusion, Major Ghulam Farouk is never far from his recruits. No detail is too small as he checks the new soldiers with their rifles, knowing that one day how well they prepare here at target practice could mean the difference between life and death.
ما رئیس ارکان مرکز تعلیمی نظامی کابل هستم و مدت 8 سال میشه که در مرکز تعلیمی نظامی کابل ایفای وظیفه میکنم و تمام تعلیمات پرسونل از دوره ابتدایی الی ختم مربوط ما میشه.
These recruits have been in the Afghan National Army for 4 weeks. They still have 8 more weeks of basic training. They're paid about $150 a month. Once they finish basic, then they will choose their discipline, whether it be engineering, medical, infantry. 3 months after that, these are the young men who are going to be on the front lines, providing security throughout Afghanistan.
There is no question it's a difficult job. Until now, international troops led by the United States had been protecting Afghans from the Taliban and other insurgents. Now it will be up to these fresh-faced recruits and an Afghan army that has grown to more than 350,000. It's just after 12 noon. A suicide bomb shatters the delicate peace in one of the roughest areas of Kabul. A Humvee blocks the road, keeping curious onlookers at a distance. Troops control the perimeter as gunfire and rocket-propelled grenades are fired back and forth. Insurgents are targeting a guest house in the heart of the city. The Taliban says it launched the attack, alleging it is run by a Christian-based humanitarian group. The fight doesn't last long, and all the insurgents are killed. Recruits like Javed know the risk involved in protecting the Afghan people from scenes like this, and he is ready to go to any length to make the nation safe.
خب زمانی که آمریکایی‌ها از کشور ما بیرون شوند، ما تمام چیزا از آمریکایی‌ها یاد گرفتیم، ما یاد دادن و میتونیم از کشور خود دفاع کنیم. یاد گرفتیم، ما آموزش دیدیم و یکی کشته شویم یا شهید شویم، درای وطن، درای کشور خود شهید شویم، برای ما افتخار است.
Security is one of the cornerstones of President Ashraf Ghani's platform, bringing stability and a more professional military to Afghanistan. He knows the country remains violent, and many more troops and leading politicians could pay the ultimate price in an effort to bring lasting peace here.
To build a nation, you need to be willing to endure sacrifice. And without that, you're not a nation. One life, if that can transform this nation in terms of sacrifice, it's worth sacrificing. And we're a people who took on the Red Army without a hope. Now we feel that we can take on the greatest task on earth, which is to build a unified nation, a strong state, a vibrant economy, and a civil society that is free, that fits our nature. We have never been slaves. Throughout history, no one has conquered us.
Back at the Kabul Military Training Center, Major Farouk is teaching these young men the skills they need to fight on the battlefield and survive, building endurance by running, learning and respecting the chain of command, and more than anything, simply by training over and over, like spending time on the gun range. So once troops find themselves in the thick of battle, the training will take over. To fully succeed, these recruits must overcome centuries of mistrust and ethnic fighting from within Afghanistan. Long simmering ethnic tension boiled over in 1989 when troops from the former Soviet Union left the country. Civil war erupted during the vacuum in leadership. Fighting was largely along ethnic lines among Pashtuns, Tajiks, Uzbeks, and Hazaras. Pashtuns making up more than 40% of the country, and the overwhelming majority of Taliban are Pashtun tribesmen who brought their version of Islamic fundamentalist rule to the country. Even though the Taliban were driven from power in 2001, bitterness, tension, and fighting linger. But army leaders work hard to root that strife out of the armed forces.
قبیله ها از تمام ملیت ها در این میآید و ما به این افتخار میکنم که ما چون در سر مرکز تعلیمی در سر دروازش که داخل میشی وحدت و یک پارچگی از اینجا آغاز میشه. ما نمی طول 3 ماهی که اینا شب و روز با ما هستن، ما کدام به حساب تضاد نژادی ملیتی هیچ چیز از اینا نمیبینیم. تمام استادای ما به اینا امی درس میدن که ما یک برادر هستیم، یک افغان هستیم و میخواهیم با یک نام از وطن خود از دفاع کنیم.
Just by looking at their faces, one can see they represent all Afghanistan's 34 provinces, telling the story of a rich mosaic of people that settled this rugged land over the generations. Hazara, Tajiks, Uzbek, Pashtun. General Amanullah Patiani is in charge of the Kabul Military Training Center. That includes 13,000 staff and soldiers in training. He refuses to allow this ethnic thread to unravel.
در طول 30 سال 25 سال قبل همه مسائل در افغانستان گذشت، خانه جنگی ها شد، قوم جنگی ها شد، سمت جنگی ها شد و مردم به مقابل یک قوم با مقابل قوم دیگر خیست، ولیکن هیچ کدام نتیجه مثبت به دست هیچ کدامشان نتیجه مثبت به دست نآوردن و امروز خوشبختانه که چی سرباز چی افسر و چی بریدمان یعنی همه منصوبین اردوی ملی این واقعیت درک کردن که و یگانه موافقیت ما در وحدت ملی است.
در اردوی ملی جایی است که باید این گپ ها نباشه. کل ما افغان هستیم و از یک کشور دفاع میکنیم و اینجا هزاره هم هست، پشتون هم هست، تاجک هم هست، از هر قوم اینجا هست و همگی مسلمان هستیم و باید از کشور خود دفاع کنیم. این گپ بین ما نباشه، تبعیض نژادی و قومی و این چیزا باید نباشه. یعنی اردوی ملی جایی است که ما همدست شده و از کشور خود دفاع میکنیم.
Friends who must come together to fight a common enemy. It's mid-afternoon along the busy Jalalabad highway, the major road from Kabul leading east. A handful of Taliban troops dressed as soldiers launched an attack on the Elections Commission office. Sadly, this is a familiar drill for Afghans. Violence is a part of everyday life. The recruits know that it's not a question of if they will be put in harm's way, but rather when. But they are only 1/3 through their 12 weeks of boot camp, of shooting, marching, and having orders barked at them night and day. These recruits are preparing to fan out across the nation and be the first line of defense for Afghan citizens. As they wind up another long day of training, Major Farouk is back home, showing a side his soldiers will never see. Over tea, he tells me about the victories, like keeping Afghanistan peaceful during the 2014 elections, which guaranteed the country's first peaceful democratic handover of power.
ما بسیار خوشحال هستیم که بدون کدام واقعه گرچه طالبان و دشمنای وطن، دشمنای فریب خورده، هر چیزی که سوگند خورده بودن، اونا با اعمال زشت خود رسیده نتونستن.
Farouk has 3 sons and a daughter with Down syndrome, who has a special place in her father's heart. He says he will stay on the front lines so his children can hopefully have a better life.
ما که هستیم سرسپردای وطن هستیم. میگم ما جان به کف میتیم تا مردم ما آرام باشه و وطن ما آرام باشه، ما از خون خود دریغ نکنیم.
Late in the afternoon, it's time for shopping ahead of dinner. While relaxing in the market, he's always aware that insurgents continue to plot their next move against the Afghan army. But he's certain he's prepared to win the fight.